Let's see an example of using dictionaries to solve a problem. In fact, this is a very common kind of problem. Uh, this whole class of problem we could call accumulation problems, where we want to count up instances of particular things. So I have this problem here in a different tab that I'll pull up for us to use here. We are going to solve this letter count problem. So for a given string, count up the number of occurrences of every character. Before, we've tried counting up for a particular character. How many times does this character appear in a string? But now we want to do that for all characters. So let's say that we have a sentence here, something like, hello, how are you today? And for simplicity, let's make this all lowercase. So the first thing we want to do is we'll want to create a dictionary. And the way that we know we need to create a dictionary here is because from reading this description, we want to know the number of occurrences for every character. And so this idea of mapping, this idea of going from, okay, for each character, how many times does it occur? So for the letter A, it occurs 2 times. The letter B occurs 0 times. The letter C occurs 1 time. That kind of pairing, where there's a key and there's a value, should make you think dictionary. And in this case, we don't, at the beginning, we start off with an empty dictionary and we're going to fill it in as we go. Let's call our dictionary letter count. And to make an empty dictionary, we use the same curly braces. We just don't put anything inside. If we had some initial value we want to set, like, okay, I'm going to set z to be 5 or something, we could do that. But that doesn't make sense because we have to go through and look at this particular string and count up how many characters, how frequently each character appears. So now that we have a dictionary, we need to look at each character. And looking at each character should be familiar. The way that we look at each character one at a time is by looping over the characters. So using a for loop. We have this construction for character. This is going to be our variable name, car. Car in sentence. We want to print that character. Why don't we just run this and see what it does? Python 3 main.py. So you can see how this prints every character on its own line. So it just prints each character one at a time. But rather than printing these characters, we want to keep a count of how frequently this character would appear. And before dictionaries, the way we would do this maybe is an A count or a B count, and so on and so forth for every possible character. That doesn't scale very well. There's so many different possible characters. So this is where a dictionary comes in handy. We can just set a certain value in our dictionary. So letter count, car. So the key, the key character, that'll be our key. And we want to set the value to be what? Well, let's think about this in a second. Let's first just set it to be 1 every time. So for every character that we see, we will set the associated value in the dictionary to be 1. Let's just see what this creates. So if we print out our letter count at the end and see what this dictionary is that we get. Okay, so we see H1, then E1, then L1, then O1, W, and I'll just expand this a little bit here. In fact, this is a little tricky to read. It's okay, we can see this. So HEL1, O1, space 1, W1, A1. Notice, by the way, so it doesn't do L1 and then another L1 because you can only have one like particular key. Like the keys are unique. So if you put in 1 with L multiple times, it just overwrites the same key L with the value of 1. This isn't what we would have expected, right? Because let's see, for example, L appears 2 times. So this should be L:2. And the spaces, we have, oops, 1 space, 2 space, 3 space, 4 spaces. So we have 4 spaces, but here the key space has a value of 1. And from what we've learned, it makes sense why this is the case, because right now we are just checking if, we're just setting the value associated with the character equal to 1 always. Really what we should do is we should set the value associated with the character to be 1 more than what it was before. Okay, well, how do we do that? We can get what the value before was by indexing into our dictionary, just like this. And if we index into the dictionary here, so we can set the letter count character. So the value associated with this character will be the current value associated with this character plus 1. This seems like a good idea. Let's give it a try. Clear. So we get a key error. Key error H. What is wrong here? Well, what line does it say it's on? It says it's on line 9. Let's look at line 9. So line 9 says letter count car equals letter count car plus 1. Here's our issue. H, the very first letter. What happens when the letter doesn't exist yet in our dictionary? Well, this left side is fine because setting an assignment where the thing that we're assigning to is like an indexed, getting a value back from the indexing into our dictionary, so letter count car, this assigns a value to a particular new key, so that's okay. This is exactly the way we assign a value. But on the right here, letter count car, this is trying to get back the value currently that's associated with this character, with this key. And at the start of our code, we have an empty dictionary. So actually, we should have 2 separate cases. The very first time we encounter a letter, we need to set the value associated with this key in our dictionary to be 1. And every other time that we encounter this letter, after the first time, we should set the value associated with the key to be 1 more than the previous value, the current value. So for this, we need to be able to check if the character is if the key is in our dictionary. So for that, we use we'll use in. So if the character is in our dictionary, so if this key already exists, then it's safe for us to get back the current value because the value exists. We know that if the key exists, there must be some associated value. Otherwise, if it doesn't exist, that means that we need to set it for the first time. So we need to do letter count car equals 1. Because if it doesn't exist yet, that means that we haven't seen that letter before. And so this must be the first time that we're seeing it. And so the count so far should be 1. Now, let's run our code and see if this does what we want it to do. So we get back H2, E2, L2, O4, space for W1, A2, R, I think 1 here. And this seems reasonable. So we do have 4 spaces, 4 O's. Do we have 4 O's? Hello, how are you today? We do. So this code now does what we want. And now if you wanted to ask, okay, how many of each letter are there, of a particular letter? So we could say, let's say that the letter we're curious about is the letter Y. Then we can say print letter appears letter count letter times. So this letter, the key, appears this many times because we're indexing into this dictionary. So Y appears 2 times. That's great because we see the key Y has an associated value of 2. That'll be it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in class. Bye.